So when you first open Blender, this is what you'll see. You get a default camera. I left click to select that. Default cube and default light. So obviously we don't really need these things to create a track. So first thing I do is hit B on the keyboard. Actually, you can just click and drag now. I forgot that. But B is like a box selection tool, so you can select everything. Or
Oh,
you can click and drag, select everything, and hit delete. So your basic movements. Well, just to give you some perspective, I'll add those things back. Um, Holding down the middle mouse button allows you to orbit around whatever point you're looking at. Your mouse wheel will zoom in and out. Holding shift and your mouse wheel will kind of drag it like this, latitude and longitude. Um, and you can also drag it up and down. So middle mouse button and dragging. Middle mouse button and shift doing this will do all this kind of
just
stuff.
about anything I need, yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got the orbit. So you can obviously focus on a different area and start orbiting around that area. Um, but let's go ahead and just delete this. And then 7 on your numpad. I'm assuming you have a numpad.
Yep.
Okay. So 7 puts you in perspective view. So that's a top-down view. And if you hold shift, you can just keep moving in this view. Otherwise, like if you don't hold shift, it'll break it from perspective.
Oh, okay.
So, sorry, this is orthographic view, this top view. So this is everything exactly like how you would see it from the exact top-down view that you could see. Um, so this is how I start, basically. And to add anything into this, you hit Shift A. That brings up this menu, and you can add a ton of different things. Um, like this software is used for Pixar level quality of animations, but you don't need to know that. But like, there's a bunch of stuff in here that you're not going to ever use, basically. So, what I do first is I go down to image, and then add a reference image. So I've got reference images already pulled up here. So, for example, we can do something simple like New Hampshire. So that loads in. I just took this picture from Google Maps, and I use my mouse wheel to zoom in, by the way. Hold shift, kind of get in the middle. So essentially we need to like measure how long these straightaways are, and usually you need to scale it up quite a bit. So you can see it's going to be like about 2 meters long. So we need straightaways. What I typically do is like I'll Google search like straightaway length New Hampshire. So that's not usually it comes up with some kind of stats right away. It's 1 mile in length, but well,
So there's not a way to like draw a line around, and I don't know.
uh, yeah, it's kind of hard to. I don't know how to measure like um with curvature yet. I don't know if that's even really a feature of Blender. So you can try to estimate as best as possible, but for right now, we don't really need to be super accurate. It's just
Right.
basically you know, I believe we need somewhere probably around 800 meters for the front stretch and the back stretch. So just based off that, let's we'll keep going forward just based off those numbers. So what I like to do first is I'll click this so this is selected, and then if you hit R on the keyboard, it'll rotate it, so you can rotate the image so it's kind of a little bit more symmetrical to what we're working with. And then I'll zoom out with the mouse wheel, and then S on the keyboard will scale this up. So then we can take another measurement. You can see that's about 70 meters now, so we need to scale it up quite a bit more.
Nigga big.
Yeah. So that's over 1,000 meters, so that's about what we're looking for right there. And then hit S on the keyboard again. That's pretty close right there. So you can actually click and drag these points too for the measurements. So, I mean, it's 600, 700, whatever. We'll just keep going. It'll be a nice short track.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about it. So you can zoom in and then obviously keep holding shift, like if you need to move up or down or sideways. And we're gonna add a plane and essentially like just trace this. But think of this image as like basically anything that you would draw on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be perfect either. It could just the width of the track doesn't have to be perfect when you draw it, as long as the general scaling of it is correct. You can play with the width after the. Ideally, like the width right now, I'll measure it. That's 24 meters. That's pretty wide, so that's plenty of space to drive some cars on. That's all really you need to worry about. But if you want to be particular about the width, you can do that. So I'll do Shift A again. That will bring back our menu to add things. And then I'll go to Mesh Plane. So you'll see it didn't really do anything, but if I zoom out, actually, if I zoom in, you can see it added this super tiny box. So you're not gonna really, you're not gonna really see anything pop up, but it's selected automatically. So we are no longer selecting this image; we're selecting this box. It's just a flat, basically, piece of paper that we laid down. So hit S and then scale this up to roughly about the width of the track, and then you'll hit G. I just remember grab for this one. Grab this by hitting G, zoom in. So we'll make a small adjustment here. So we'll scale it down a little bit with S on the keyboard. All right, so there's two main different modes of Blender. You've got object mode and edit mode. So to switch between the two, essentially object mode is kind of placing your 3D models in specific spots and all that kind of stuff. But for this, we need to basically edit this piece of paper to just kind of trace along this road. So what I'll do is I'll hit Tab on the keyboard, and that brings up edit mode. And you can see actually up here a lot of our options changed. You see we're in object mode, and then it shows edit mode right up here in the top left. So it's important to be in edit mode when we're making the track. You can't do it otherwise. And what I just did there, I just selected that vertice. You can select any vertice you want. If you hold shift, you can select multiple vertices. So I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to hit E on the keyboard for extrude. So we're basically just extruding out those vertices. So we've made quite a long plane, and we can finish off this straightaway pretty quickly just by extruding out again. So this gets a little more complicated here, but not too bad. Basically, we'll extrude again, and we'll do the best we can with it. And then you see we're kind of pointed in the wrong direction. Essentially, all the shortcuts are always the same in Blender, so you can rotate by hitting R. And essentially, we can smooth this out after we're done, but I'm going to just extrude this out, rotate, extrude out, rotate, and I'm going to keep doing this until I get all the way around the track.
And you're pressing E every time, right, to extrude?
Yep. Yeah, it's really...
And it'll always keep that same vertice selected?
Yep. When you hit E, it automatically selects the new vertices that were selected. So you might hit E and then like you might not see anything initially, but you just got to move your mouse and you'll start seeing them.
Are you holding it or just clicking it once?
Just one time, yeah.
Okay.
And then so E and then left click to put them where you want. So until you left click, so let me do it again. So I'll hit E and it's just gonna follow my cursor until I left click, right like that. So that's kind of important.
Yeah.
So this is kind of unimportant, really. Like the straightaway can just, you don't have to really put a lot of detail into the straightaway. If you don't, unless you want it kind of like to have a little bit of character, but I don't really care.
Right.
So E, left click, R to rotate, and then left click again. E, extrude, left click, R to rotate, extrude. E for extrude. So we'll just keep doing that. And obviously, it's not going to be perfect our first pass, but I'm going to show you a little advanced trick to kind of just smooth it out after the fact. Or you can do this before. This thing that I'm going to show you, you can do before, and you can kind of get it exactly how you want it if you're trying to be extremely precise. But for right now, like, we're not really trying to be precise. We're just trying to have a general shape. So that wasn't too bad. We've got the general shape of New Hampshire. Okay, so at this point, in order to join basically the track together to create one essentially, oops, hold on. I think I messed up. To create just one plane or connected plane, you want to actually, one second before I talk about that. If you extrude and you make a mistake, like say you extrude and you're like, oh gosh, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to extrude that way, or I didn't mean to extrude at all. You can right click and it'll just undo it. So you're just left with exactly what you had before. So E, oh no, I messed up. I didn't mean to do that. Left click. Sorry, right click, and then you're back to where you started. So remember we talked about the selection tool, click and drag, so you can do that here too. Click and drag, and we've got all these vertices selected. And we're gonna hit F, and that stands for face. So we're essentially just creating a face to connect these two together. And voila. Got the general outline. So we're still in edit mode, so we can up here you can see we're still in edit mode. You can see the vertices, so I can select any one of them. So that's how you know you're in edit mode. We need to swap back into object mode in order to add an effect basically to smooth out these vertices so it looks a little bit more like a racetrack. So I'll go to Tab on the keyboard, or you can also go up here to Edit Mode and switch to Object Mode, whatever is easier for you. But you see, obviously, like we need more detail in the track in order for it to look proper. So what we'll go to on the side here is the wrench icon, and this is our modifiers panel. So if you hover over this, it says modifier properties. This is basically the last piece of the puzzle that you'll need to create a completely flat track that matches your specifications. So you go to add modifier, and then you'll go to subdivision surface, and there's always a shortcut for these types of things. So as soon as you're in object mode and you have the track selected, see how it has that orange outline?
Mm-hmm.
You can actually hit Control 1 on the keyboard. See how it smoothed it out there? And it's like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So you can see here when I did that, I'll do it again in case you missed it. So over here on the modifier panel, it adds this subdivision surface modifier, and that's basically found right here, subdivision surface.
Gotcha.
And essentially, you've got two different ways of adjusting this. It's what you'll actually see in the viewport, which is what we really want to adjust. And then there's what will show up in the actual final rendering of the track. Typically, I just try to keep these two numbers the same because the only reason for the difference is to save your CPU or GPU performance in the levels viewport. That's only if you're working with a super complex scene. So what I typically do is I'll bump this up to 4, and that smooths the surface out even more. So you can see it's at 0, and we'll zoom in here to the track, and you can kind of see as it gets bumped up, it gets more and more smooth. So I think actually 3. You don't want to add too much detail because this adds basically to the load of
Right.
the game itself. Like if there's so much detail into the track that it's like a million vertices, then or billion vertices, it's going to be a problem performance-wise.
So basically, it just tripled the amount of vertices.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and if I go back into edit mode, how you can more finely tune like the shape of your track, you can click one of these vertices, and now you're working with much finer detail as far as the shape is concerned, because it's taking into consideration that modifier that we added.
And then you can basically fill the track the way it is right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just grab this. I'll grab this, and so basically, I kind of made a mistake here. I didn't add enough detail originally. So this is something that you probably won't have to worry about as long as you don't, try to take it too far like I did here. But if you did want to add more detail right here, like there's no vertex here, so I want to grab this part, but I can't. So I'm gonna hit Control R. I'm sorry, Shift R. Let's see, why is that not popping up? No, it was Control R. So hold Control R. That's what got me. So you have to hold Control R, and that will bring up basically another way to slice the thing up. And sometimes it doesn't quickly pop up. So you gotta find the right spot. And if you're in kind of like a different area here, it's not gonna pop up right away. So if you get closer to the edges, it's more likely to pop up. So we can add detail through the middle, or we can add detail right here, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to left click, and now we're basically free to move this where we want it. But whenever I click again, that's going to put the vertice wherever it is at that moment. So basically what we did there, we just added another vertice, and then we can hit G on the keyboard, hit G on the keyboard again. So we're just grabbing these vertices and just moving them slightly around wherever we think that we want them.
And you can move them like left and right though still, right? And
Yeah,
maybe just yeah, okay, yeah.
you can move them as far as wide as you want. And if you mess up, say like, oh no, I made a mistake, just Control Z, like other
Yep.
programs, that'll just undo any changes. So you can really get pretty in the weeds here as far as like detail goes, but typically I don't really worry about that too much because like sometimes a little bit of mistakes here and there adds like kind of fun to the tracks. If it's not perfect, that's totally cool.
So we have Darlington, right?
That's right. Um, so uh, if you wanted to take a different look at your track or like see your track a little bit better with more contrast along the background, we can actually hide the background layer, the image layer we brought in. We'll just hit the left click button, left click on the keyboard, and then H. That will hide anything that you have clicked or selected like this. If you hit H on the keyboard, it'll hide it. It won't delete it. It's all up here in basically your scene collection. And you can see the eye icon right here that you can
Oh yeah,
you can
okay.
bring it back. So the shortcut to bring it back is Alt H. So that brings everything back. But you can turn layers on and off up here in your scene collection.
It's like Photoshop.
Yep, exactly. Um, so remember, if I don't hold Shift and I use my middle mouse button, it's going to take me out of this perspective view. So see, it says user perspective, and essentially we're pointed down at the track. So you'll see that this will change whenever I middle mouse click and drag. Actually, it didn't. Um, Not sure why. But anyway, we're back to this view. We can kind of orbit around and take a look and see, if we got everything exactly how we wanted it. You'll also run into this issue with just some clipping because like these models are so big that Blender doesn't really calculate it by default. So we hit N on the keyboard, and this is a little bit in the weeds, but we'll go to View, and then we want this end. It's essentially, this is where our clipping ends or begins, depending on what
I
your
get
start and end. So I just changed this to 10,000 meters and hit enter, and that will fix any of that issue of the model getting clipped.
so so basically that's just being used to help like with memory or whatnot.
Yeah,
So you're
exactly.
not yeah, okay.
And that's only with a complex scene. You won't have any issue creating something like this. So I'm going to go back and hit 7 on the numpad again, and obviously back into the top-down view. What I like to do is I try to get the middle of the track like right here where this intersects. So when I import it, or move it around or rotate it in another program, it's going to rotate on basically around the middle of the track and not some random other spot. So I'm going to select the track, left click, and then hit G, and I just drag it over and get it roughly around the center and hit left click again. So that is all you need to know in order to get it, in order to get the track completely flat and give us like essentially a plane to race on. But that's not exactly, it's not as useful as adding banking typically and like elevation changes. So I'll show you that real quick. So basically we need to go into edit mode for this track, and to do that we'll left click and then hit tab. So now we're back in edit mode. We can see all these vertices. We can see one vertex is already selected. Um, so what I do for this is I kind of try to make these vertices on the inside go down a little bit, and these vertices on the outsides go up a little bit. So to do that, I like to use the circle select tool, which is C on the keyboard. That will bring up this ability to kind of just click and drag, and whenever a vertice enters the circle, it's going to get selected. So what I can do is just select these on the outside. Alright, and then to get rid of your circle selection, hit your right click on the mouse, and now we've got this ability to manipulate these vertices on the outside. So usually for this, you know how we have that top-down view by hitting 7, we've also got other views in this orthographic view that basically we're working with. So we've got a right orthographic and a front orthographic. So you kind of have to know where you're working with, and like, see, that's not exactly the type of view. I think we need to go with the front orthographic, and that's 1 and 3 on the numpad.
I see.
So that those 7, 1, and 3, and if you hit Control 7, 1, and 3, it'll do the exact opposite basically. Uh, that's a little advanced, but we don't really need to go there. So just like we grabbed our vertices in the other demonstration, we can grab them here. So we'll hit G on the keyboard and see how it's kind of like freely going about, and I can accidentally add
Oh, yeah.
way too much banking or shorten up the width of the track or something by accident. So what we want to do, we only want to grab it on the Z axis. So you can see the different. We've got our Y axis here, that's the green line. We've got our X axis here, that's the red line. And then we've also got a Z axis, which is typically a blue line. It runs down, up and down basically. So
Yep.
we build on the Z axis. So I'll go back into that view, the front orthographic view. You can see up there. That's I guess where it's in edit mode. It'll tell you you're in orthographic view. So holding shift, dragging, and getting close up here, I can hit G on the keyboard and then Z. You see that blue line? That's showing us we're only editing these on the Z axis. So I can move this around as much as I want, but I'm not going to move the vertices on the X or Y axis. So just move them up. And if we wanted to be specific with the banking, we can do that. So say I wanted 20 degrees, but I'm not sure exactly how much banking that was that I put in. We can go back into object mode. I know this is a lot, by the way, but we're recording, so
You're good.
you can
I'm
go.
following.
You'll be able to go back and review this at any point. So we'll go back into object mode, hit tab, and then we've got our measuring tool here. So basically what we'll do is we'll zoom in and essentially just take a measurement of how high the banking is, and then click right in the middle, and then that allows us to measure
Whoa, that's cool.
yeah, that measures the banking itself. So that's about 17, so I know I need to go a little bit further. I can just hit delete.
Wait, do that. Do that again. Grabbing it for the angle. What'd you do?
Yeah, so left click to measure, and you need to hold the left click. So hold the left click, go down to this. This is where the X axis is. This is essentially our ground.
Yeah.
So, and then we're going to left click right in the middle and then drag it out. We have to hold our left click and drag it out right in the middle.
Gotcha.
And then we can let go. So 17 degrees of banking, and that's not including the banking that we're going to add to the inside um,
Right. Right.
through grabbing those inside vertices. So I'm going to hit delete, delete, and that gets rid of our measurement. So I'll go back into edit mode. So to select these inside vertices, we got to hold our middle mouse button and kind of get out of that uh, orthographic view. So we've got these selected. What you can do is kind of you can select off of them just by left clicking, or Control A, sorry, Shift A. Oops, that was not Shift A. Shift A. Sorry, not Shift A. I have all these memorized in my brain, and actually having to do it like when I'm teaching is weird. So A, just A on the
Select all.
keyboard selects all of them, and AA really fast in rapid succession will unselect them.
Oh, okay.
So essentially, if you've got, say you've got a random selection of vertices and you just want to unselect them all, just hit AA really fast, and that will unselect them. So there's a ton of shortcuts to kind of learn, but they will become extremely useful and like the back of your hand if you practice.
Right.
So you can see like some of these vertices are really hard to see. There's also different views you can use in order to kind of see these vertices. So we'll hit Z on the keyboard, and that shows us our selection here for wireframe view. And now it's a lot easier to see, okay, I've got vertices here, 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 and it's a lot easier to know where to select them. So I'm going to hit C on the keyboard again. That brings up the circle selection tool. And I'm going to select these inside vertices. So when you have the selection tool enabled, see I can't like go to where I want to go. Even though I'm holding shift, I can't drag. So I right click again. That gets rid of that circle selection tool, and I can start moving my perspective again, basically.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So hit C again. You can get the rest of them. And then we need to go back to that side view again. 1 on the numpad. See front orthographic view. So now, essentially, this is going to create that little bit of a Dover effect where you can actually drop into the turns a little bit. So if we hit grab G on the keyboard and then Z, that will make it so we're essentially kind of losing a little bit of altitude on entry to the corner. So we just added a little bit of banking there by doing that. And we'll go out of edit mode by hitting tab, select our measuring tool, just measuring the height essentially, trying to line it up as good as we can. That looks pretty good. And then, oops, 4.8 degrees. I must have done something wrong there. um, I don't know why it's giving me 4.8. But well, I'm
Yeah,
not
I
gonna
don't need it.
worry about that for right now. But essentially, we know we added a little bit of banking because obviously it's just a sharp or a less sharp angle right here. So
Yeah.
and what we can do now is now that our turn is kind of like below our ground here, we can hit G on the keyboard and then Z again and move it just up a little bit so we're just above the ground level. And when I import this into a different software, it's not going to go through the ground basically. It,
Oh, okay.
um, I could just move it up slightly, but it's good to try to be consistent so we, are efficient. Um, so if I click and drag with my middle mouse button, you can see we've added quite a bit of banking, and it's easier to see if I go to Z and then go into solid view. So you can see the transition there off the banking.
Looks incredible.
Looks pretty cool. So a lot of turns, obviously, they aren't this abrupt with the banking
Right.
changes. So what we'll do is we'll select this, hit tab, and that's going to bring us back into edit mode. So we can fine tune these vertices. So I'll select this one, hit G, and then Z. So we're just going to add a little bit of height to that vertice, and then you see how much of a difference that made on the
Yeah.
exit. It just made an incredible difference. So um, I'm gonna essentially do the same thing with this corner here, and hit tab on the keyboard, select this one, and then hit G and then Z. So we're only editing on that Z axis. So that makes it a lot easier to carry more speed into the turn. You could even grab this one, depending on where your next vertice is and what you want the track to drive like. Essentially, you can grab as many vertices as you want and add banking on the straightaway. Now you've kind of got everything you need to make a track uh, pretty much exactly how you want it. But we can basically do the same thing with this with this turn. So I'll do this real quick. So obviously C on the keyboard, circle select, and then grab all these vertices. And when you get comfortable with it, sometimes you can eyeball it in this view. So we'll hit G and then Z, and then add some banking that way. Um, and that's when you get really comfortable with the program and you kind of know what you're exactly
I
what
see what you're doing there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly what you're doing. If you make a mistake, um, you
Control Z the hell out of it.
yeah, exactly. And then you can also like hit G, Z again. Like you've still got these vertices selected,
Right. Right.
so you've always got that level of control. Say we can add some monster banking off the turn so people can carry a ton of speed. Or I mean, you can, for example, if you just want a steep drop off to make it really challenging on exit, um, sorry, that's middle mouse button and trying to just get back to where I need to be. I can just select these and just have an incredible fall off on the exit, but a ton of banking before then, so it just makes it like a really challenging exit, um, to where you can't really get on the gas too early. It's all just kind of how you want it to drive. Um, but I've noticed a lot of fun tracks for me kind of have that a little bit of that transition, so it's not like super frustrating to you smack the wall every time. Um,
Right.
I think it. I don't know. I think it's just because I'm used to my game basically kind of still drives like an arcade, so I expect it to be as easy as an arcade. So sometimes I'm just like, oh man, that turn's way too hard, but iRacing is like 10 times more harder than that sometimes. So uh, it's funny. But real quick, if you wanted to add banking on the straightaways, just really quickly, you can go into top view, that's 7, and hold shift, middle mouse. So essentially, we'll go into edit mode here by hitting tab, circle select with C, get all, oh, see we've got actually some selected that we don't want down here. We can hit AA twice really fast to unselect everything, but also you can hit hold shift and that's going to unselect. That's another tool that I use quite a lot. Um, but I'm going to hold shift to add vertices to this. Sorry, I'm not going to hold shift to add to this collection of vertices. I'm going to just going to select these down here. And I think actually we don't need this one right here. So I'm going to hold shift, Get rid of that one. And then go into front orthographic, which is 1 on the numpad. Sorry. So whenever you've got this circle selection tool selected, it's not going to let you do much of anything. So right click and you can get out. And then 1 on the numpad, you can see, oh, okay, we can add some banking. So G and then Z, we're going to add some banking on the straightaway. And we can get pretty crazy really quickly. Oops, looks like, oh, I think I messed up here. This might be a good learning opportunity. So what I did here, this is essentially showing me that I had 2 vertices in exactly the same spot, because we selected one of them and then the other one didn't get selected. So that is a problem that you'll probably run into a little bit, because you'll extrude and then undo, and then you forgot that you already had vertices there, and then you'll extrude again. So you'll basically have vertices on top of vertices, which can be a little bit of an issue. But basically, I think we can just select these 2 right down here, hit delete. Actually, no, that won't work. Let me undo that. Yeah, that was not
Delete
good.
the top ones, maybe?
So yeah, I'm gonna delete the top ones, and we're gonna have to add back in some geometry here. So kind of like how we did on the front stretch, we're just gonna select these and then hit F on the keyboard.
Yes, yeah.
So you can see though, you're gonna need to undo until you get basically back to where we were here. So you're going to need to know that happened, undo, get to here, delete, and then delete. So now you know you've only got 1 vertex there. So it's a little bit confusing, and that when that happens, but now we're back to where we can edit this correctly. But usually you don't run into too crazy issues like that with vertices on top of vertices. That's only if you don't follow the process correctly the first time, which I was kind of running through it. But yeah, so at this point, like, I have an add-on for this where I can go to my pipeline, export, and send to Unreal Engine. And I don't have Unreal launched right now, but I can actually just start driving on this track right now if I wanted to.
Do it.
All right. So.
if it's not too complicated.
Oh, it's not. It's not. It just basically a couple of small tweaks to. Where did my cup go? There it is. I was having a beer and I was like, where'd my cup go? But this'll be quick.
You may or may not have a road course ready for you when you wake up. Then.
Cool. So.
Awesome.
I'm not gonna teach you this part yet because it's just kind of complicated. But I'll go. Let's see. I'm gonna go to one of my less detailed maps and add it in there. Example. So this is a short track I made the other day. It's kind of small. So basically, when I get in here, I need to make sure this is named appropriate. So I always name them. So like if this was New Hampshire Speedway, I would just type New Hampshire Speedway, and then I always add plain to the end. When I teach you how to make walls, it'll be New Hampshire Speedway wall. And it can't have spaces because that's how Unreal Engine works. So just everything together, and then if you have multiple words, just capitalize. Um, so now it's selected, right? I've got to drag this into the mesh folder. So it's gonna export everything in this mesh folder. And I'll go up to pipeline, export, and send to Unreal. And it's gonna freeze my computer for a quick second. But it's gonna import over here, which is kind of cool. You can see New Hampshire Speedway, no smoothing group found. It'll always find a couple little things, ways to improve your mesh basically, but I don't really have any issues, so I always dismiss this warning, and then I can pull up my content drawer and go to architecture and search New Hampshire Speedway. So I'll click and drag. Now it's in the game. I messed up there.
Oh no.
For some
We forgot.
reason,
I was gonna say, I thought we fixed it.
we did. I think that might be a bug. That is really, really weird. I've never had that happen before, so we're gonna try to fix it on the fly. Maybe I know what happened here. So, I think I might have had 3 vertices on top. So basically you need to get this looking to where it's kind of curved off. Otherwise,
Okay.
you've got more geometry that's pulling one way or another. So like it kind of looked like that.
Yeah, you definitely had the inside going up, so yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So let me re-import that or export that from here. And the great thing is, once I do this, if there's any changes, see it automatically updates. So I don't have to re-drag it in and everything. So if there's any changes, it's good to go. So to drive it, I'm gonna have to unplug my pedals real quick, because for whatever reason, yeah, having my pedals plugged in does not make Unreal Engine happy.
I didn't mean to mess up your whole night.
Oh, it's not a big deal. I think we're good now. Oh, so, alright. So another thing I didn't do. This is basically a plane that doesn't physically exist yet. So I have to go into its actual properties. And in the settings, I need to basically tell the program that I want it to be collidable. So in the collision complexity, I'll go to use complex collision as simple. And that's going to make it so we can actually collide with it, with our car. So I'll hit play again. I have no idea where the player start is, so I'm going to move our player start closer to the track. And this might feel like a really big track in comparison to New Hampshire, but it's probably because our car is kind of slow.
Are you sideways?
Yeah, it's not picking up my controller yet, so I've got one other thing plugged in that I need to get unplugged. So I've got my car, now drive. I typically use like this view. So we added a lot of banking, 20 degrees, so this is not what New Hampshire's banking is.
Right. Basically,
It looks pretty big. I think, gosh, yeah. So if we wanted to scale this down, it's pretty quick and easy fix. Yeah, we made Homestead. That was a glitch, and I think I know what causes that. Been experiencing that, but that's weird. I'll just stay on the outside. Actually, this kind of reminds me of one more thing that I want to show you. I should have known this track was going to be super wide. It was 20 meters is pretty wide. I'll do one lap though, so you can just see it. So we're only going like 140 there on entry. It's just that this car is kind of slow.
heck yeah. This is exciting.
Yeah. Eventually it'll be easy, like we'll have a process down to, oh god, yeah. Yeah, that was not great. So you can see actually I don't have double-sided materials on the plane either, so it'll disappear when it's over here like this.
Yeah, we were talking about that with your figure 8 track.
Oh yeah, that's right. So let me see here, Blender. So that reminds me, speaking of Homestead, if you did want to add progressive banking, obviously you can't do it with what I showed you. We need to go into edit mode with tab on the keyboard, and then Control R. Remember we added that detail this way. We're going to add it in the middle. So left click, and so we can slide these vertices up or down on the track. So depending on where you want to add banking or remove banking, that's where you're gonna have these vertices ultimately end up. So let's say just being absolutely
very top groove.
Yeah, just being crazy, let's add it to the top groove. So I just left clicked and all these vertices are set in place now. So it's easier to see this in wireframe view. Z on the keyboard, wireframe. So you can see now, okay, we've got detail to play with here. We want to basically add, we want to grab these vertices on the top and move them up. That's how we would add banking most efficiently to the top lane. So AA on the keyboard, that will unselect everything. A on the keyboard selects everything, obviously. We went over that. So AA real quick, unselect. We'll do C to circle select, and we're essentially just doing exactly what we did before. Just gonna select these outside vertices. Right click to get rid of the circle selection, and then G on the keyboard, GZ. That will, and that's gonna be a smooth transition because it's still applying that modifier right here. It's not going to be a extremely abrupt transition, but it's going to be definitely noticeable.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we can go pretty crazy. So might as well for the demonstration. So I'll just export this. So it will take a second, especially when you kind of have tracks that have a lot more detail. So you can see it already added in that that banking on the
Oh
top.
yeah.
It's harder to see because we don't have like the lighting isn't exactly in a way that makes it easy to see. But when you start driving on it, it's quite a bit easier to see. I think the 3 and 4. Obviously, we didn't add it in 3 and 4. I think. I don't know. I'm calling this 3 and 4.
No, we did add it.
We did add it.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see. Obviously, not as banked. Yeah. And you'll have to play with the kind of the transition onto the straightaway more when you do that, because it's gonna be all. I guess we'll see.
Now, when we added that middle of the track vertice, did that go all the way around the track?
It did go all the way around the track, but we so we added detail, but we didn't use it in the other parts of the track because we only grabbed these vertices in this turn and moved them up.
So if you wanted to add progressive banking in turn 1 and 2, you don't have to get out and do this. But if you did it in turn 1 and 2, you would do the same thing.
Yep.
Like by doing the R, but
You
drag the thing down and just move it on 1 and 2, right?
Yeah. So that reminds me of another good thing to mention. So like obviously we added these vertices in the middle of the track basically, or near the top. So this goes around the whole track, and say basically, let's say we're a track developer and we screwed up massively and we don't want to have as much progressive banking from top to bottom. We want it to be steeper throughout the whole track. We can also hold Alt on the keyboard, left click.
You cut out. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, say we wanted to add more, like a more gradual progressive banking. Like we don't want it to be as flat on the bottom in comparison to the top. We can actually select basically our entire.
You cut out again. You can select. You're good. You can select that vertice and what?
You can select this entire like selection. Is it really?
Not like that sentence.
It's hello.
Yeah.
It looks like it's lighting up now. You can select the entire middle detail of the track and adjust it that way too, by holding Alt and clicking. So like I can select the entire outside. I can select the entire outside of the track, or I can select the entire inside of the track.
You're cutting out.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Hold on. What is going on there? Okay. Oh! I know why. Okay. I know why. It's because Alt is a TeamSpeak whisper.
Oh.
That is
like, as
not.
soon as you start talking about that one specific thing, you go away.
That is so weird. Okay. Yeah, so I just hit Alt and then I clicked. I'm gonna do it right now. So you can select either like these vertices in a row or the entire like vertices around the entire track.
Okay. So what you're saying when you're cutting out here is when you select one initial spot and then you press Alt, it will highlight that whole line.
Yeah, so and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have anything selected basically. So I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to left click right here.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to hold Alt and left click right. I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to left click right here. See how it grabs that middle part?
Yeah.
So we still have that detail in the middle of the track in this turn, even though we're not using it. So we don't have to add another, Control R or whatever to get more detail. So basically, if I wanted to do the same thing on this side, essentially just grab these vertices and raise them up.
Or you can grab the middle ones and move them towards the bottom.
Yeah, you could do that too, and it would
Just move
have,
it in the X.
it would essentially reduce banking. That would reduce banking from the inside and keep the top relatively similar to what it is now.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of when I'm doing a road course
Uh
of
huh.
like a couple corners later, it's going to be going the opposite way. So that's what
Mhm.
I was thinking.
Yeah, with a road course, it'll get a little more tricky because you'll just have to be more aware of basically what side you're working with and all that. Because it's easy. Ovals have just been super easy for me to just kind of bang out because they're all relatively similar and um, it's
Right.
not bad. But I will I'll pull up this one.
Ice America. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. So this is actually a trace of Road America. So you can see in edit mode here how many different extrusions and everything that I have. And I'll pull up the actual track map.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you can see you can get really, really detailed and like, basically once you, for example, once you know the length of this front stretch and you get it roughly correct, everything else is in scale. So you don't have to measure anything else. It's going to be exactly how it is in real life.
Yeah. That's cool.
Um,
So
that's one. I'll
would it
show one
would
more
it?
thing.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You had a question?
Yeah. So like, say I'm working on this road course here. Uh, can you go back to the Road America real quick?
Yeah.
Just go back here. Yeah. So um, the left side over there. Um, yeah, those. So if I wanted to like mess with like the, let's say I want half of that going banking to the right and that middle section there banking to the left, would it be easier to like not have the track fully connected? Would it be easier if you just made sections of it and worked with it that way? So you,
Um,
so what I'm trying to say is, that middle line that we added.
yeah.
Um, can you add a middle line without it being a full circle?
So yeah, that's a good point actually. Um, not not really. No, like if you wanted to add progressive banking on a road course, you're essentially adding vertices where you might not even need them, which can make it a little confusing. That's something you'll have to
Yeah,
kind of
I see
play
what you're
with.
saying now. Yeah.
But as long as you keep track, say I wanted to add progressive banking, I just left clicked and brought those vertices in. So if I wanted to add progressive banking to this turn right here, I can just select these outside vertices, hold shift, grab on the Z axis, G, Z, and then I can start to play with the progressive banking of this turn individually um, without affecting the other turns. It's just that in every part of the track, you're going to have more vertices now to play with. So
Right.
you want to get the general shape and elevation of the track decided and finalized before you start doing anything else.
Okay.
Um, before you start adding banking, because essentially when you're working in this view, it's really easy. It's like you're kind of just drawing.
Sure.
Um, and then you want to start working in this view. This is your elevation. So like say I wanted to have this part of the track like be super elevated so I can select these vertices, grab them and hold on.
Oh,
Hold
that's
on.
awesome.
So we need that's actually a good example. We need to go into wireframe to make sure we select all the vertices over here. So say I wanted this part of the track to be like on the like a little bit higher. So I'll grab on the Z axis. So now this entire part of the
Oh, that's badass.
yeah, that entire part of the track is like Obviously, this is not going to be acceptable in the final version,
Well, sure, sure.
but you can start working with these vertices to kind of make this a little bit more believable. Um, but then you've got your elevation changes, and then basically once you get elevation, shape, then you start going into these individual vertices. I'm gonna add banking right here. I want this to be super high bank, kettle corner or whatever, or kettle bottoms. I don't know where we are. So that's the process that I would use instead of working on individual parts of the track and trying to put them together.
Right.
Um, that's probably an easier method.
Yeah, I was thinking too much earlier when I was thinking about because you don't really need the middle line unless you're only doing progressive banking.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's the only use that I've had it for. And
Unless you want to add like crowning to a track or something,
yeah,
like a
remind me
road
what
crown.
crowning is. Um,
So road crown, like on a regular road, the middle of the road is higher, so the water runs off the sides.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you just raise up the middle. But okay.
yeah, yeah. You could do that for sure. And a little subtle effect of that probably would add a little bit of realism too. For some of these road courses, I'm sure. Um,
Dude, I'm gonna have a ball with these road courses.
that's awesome. Well, um, I'll show you Jake's road course that he really wanted me to put in. Uh, this is snow day.
And we both went to Motorplex. I like it.
Yeah. So this is he wanted this part of the track elevation, and we
Heck
did some
yeah.
banking. This reminds me a lot of a go-kart track, to be honest.
I was thinking an off-road truck track.
Yeah, that too. There's absolutely no runoff, which I think is kind of cool
Yeah.
because you don't have to worry about track limits or anything. Um, Not that, track limits are gonna be like I'm gonna try to make it so like there's cutting the track will always be a disadvantage somehow.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how I'm gonna do it yet. Um,
All the grass is super sticky glue. You
yeah,
just stop.
yeah, you just stop. I don't know. Like we'll think of something. But this actually does remind me. Um, I think I'm gonna leave walls for a different time and just let you focus on the tracks only because I don't want to throw too
Yeah.
much at you. There's a I honestly just figured out the best way to make walls, and I need to kind of
Play with.
remember. Yeah, I need to just confirm that that's exactly the way I want you to start building them, 'cause they're not a pain. It like you can do them pretty quickly, but essentially what we did to make uh, that like split the control R, that's essentially what you do with the walls, and then you start extruding the vertices for the walls.
Hmm.
But I've run into some glitches and stuff with my original technique, and it's not consistent enough to where I didn't notice it right away. So now I have like
Yeah.
half my tracks with walls that need to be redone basically. Not a big deal. It's time consuming.
Sure.
And some of your I don't know. Like I think a lot of your tracks might not have walls initially, like especially right up against the track. But I can show you that definitely when I start finalizing like the process for that.
Yeah.
It's fun though. Um, Once you have walls, you can really start to push the limits. And I'll show you actually really quick. Like essentially to make a wall, like we'd add some detail here, move it right up next to these vertices, and then I'm I'm gonna I'm
Ah.
just gonna go really quickly. Uh, we make a new selection, and then we're gonna apply our modifier and select them all, extrude Z, extrude. So that's the process of making a wall, like super quick, right? It's not,
Oh, yeah.
I need to just make sure that that's exactly how I want you to make them. And another kind of tricky thing is like, see how
Oh, they disappear because of the.
oh,
Yeah.
no, it was just me, I think, like moving the mouse too quickly. See how they're just straight up and down in relative to
Oh,
basically the ground. So they can almost act like ramps. Oops.
yeah, yeah,
It
that
gets
works.
really tricky when you start zooming in, but you can almost like see, geez, how these would start, launching cars off of them instead of stopping them.
That
um,
would be a bad thing.
yeah. So um, there's ways of getting around that. You can basically like,
I assume you're pressing Alt.
yeah, Alt and Shift, and to basically you can scale like basically now that we have all these top vertices selected. What I've been doing is I just scale it in slightly. So that creates a slight amount of like angle to keep cars from ramping up. But what that also does is it points it in on the straightaways too. So they're not straight up and down on the straightaways either. They're just tilted in towards
Yeah.
the cars.
So you
So
have to select the vertices that you want to do that to.
yeah, yeah. So it's gonna be. I just want to make sure exactly what we do the first time through all these is how we end up doing it, like forever. So once I get that figured out, we'll figure it out. But let me save this. We'll actually might put this in some. I don't know. I didn't really have a plan to have a clone of Homestead, but um, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me I'll stop recording now. So I'll just upload this to